Hello everyone. Today in this paper, which is titled Subversive Echoes in Silence, Heteroglossia and Gender Identity in Tennessee Williams's Something About Him, I'm going to delve into the subtle layers of Tennessee Williams' lesser-known story, Something About Him, which was published in 1946. My paper will focus on the intricate interplay of hegemonic influences, heteroglossia, and the representation of gender identity as framed by Michael Bakhtin's theories in the dialogic imagination specifically, and David Riesman's sociological perspectives in his famous and groundbreaking book, The Lonely Crowd. First, let's situate the story within its broader sociocultural context. Something About Him emerges from a marginalized publication status, never achieving the canonical recognition of Williams's more famous works. Set in the conservative landscape of Mississippi's Bible Belt, the story unfolds in a community deeply entrenched in tradition-directed values, as defined by Riesman in The Lonely Crowd. This setting serves as a fertile ground for examining the forces of hegemony that silence dissent and enforce conformity. Michael Bakhtin's concept of centripetal and centrifugal forces in the dialogic imagination provides a useful lens to understand the narrative dynamics. The community in Williams's story epitomizes the centripetal force, that is, seeking to maintain societal cohesion through cultural and ideological homogeneity. In contrast, Haskell, the story's protagonist, represents the centrifugal force. His presence and behaviors challenged the normative structures and gender identities of the community. David Riesman's typology of character adaptations in The Lonely Crowd, that is, tradition-directed, inner-directed, and other-directed, further enriches our analysis. Most characters in the story are tradition-directed. That is, their moral compass and behaviors are heavily influenced by an unspoken communal consensus. Haskell, however, embodies the inner-directed type. He is guided by his personal convictions rather than by societal expectations. Haskell's character is then a poignant illustration of Ralph Waldo Emerson's ideal of self-reliance. Through his distinctive, almost defiant individuality, Haskell disturbs the prevalent gender norms and the societal expectations of conformity. His engagement with poetry and his delicate mannerisms position him as an emblem of resistance against the commodification and alienation prevalent in capitalist societies. This juxtaposition serves as a critique of the Masonian encouragement of self-reliance in an inherently conformist society. Miss Rose, a librarian and the story's secondary focus, oscillates between the centripetal forces of her community and the liberating, albeit unsettling, influence of Haskell. Her fluctuating response to Haskell, from initial suspicion to a covert fascination, highlights her internal struggle between societal expectations and personal desires. She represents a key example of an individual caught in the conflict of Riesman's tradition-directed and inner-directed character types. As she interacts with Haskell, Miss Rose begins to question the rigid frameworks that have shaped her existence. Her journey is marked by moments of personal revelation where she briefly steps into a more genuine, self-directed life before retreating back to the safety of societal norms. This oscillation is particularly evident in the transformative moments that Miss Rose experiences in the presence of Haskell. These instances, where she contemplates stepping beyond her traditional librarian role into someone more daring and autonomous, symbolize their struggle for personal authenticity in a repressive environment. Her actions, while subtle, are revolutionary in the context, questioning and resisting the gravitational pull of the community's centripetal forces. Therefore, Miss Rose suggests that Gaskell should move to her own building, and they have several encounters in the landing, and I quote from the text. She caught her elbow as she stepped over the cart. His touch, his slight upward pressure, seemed to release her from all effect of gravity, so that she felt as though she were floating with feathery lightness over the street. She also puts aside her conventional role of employee at the Bluebell Public Library and fantasizes with the idea of becoming a different woman, a sort of femme fatale. I quote again from the text. That night, when she was alone in her room, she slipped it on and stood in front of the long oval mirror. It created a new Miss Rose, not one who was employed at the Blue Hill Public Library, but one who danced all night in open pavilions, laughed recklessly in Mediterranean moonlight, and won huge sums, they said, at roulette in the gambling casino. The symbolism that surrounds Miss Rose is also quite revealing. The narrator compares her with a thin tissued kite that was suddenly caught in a rising wind. Clearly, she's like a kite that can be transferred from one place to another by the capricious wind, a metaphor for Haskell himself. In exploring gender identity, Williams's story then makes use of Haskell's ambiguity and deviation from the male stereotypes prevalent in the 1940s Deep South. Haskell's refined mannerisms and aesthetic appreciation place him outside the conventional male paradigm, inviting disdain and suspicion from the community. This portrayal challenges the binary gender norms and highlights the restrictive societal boxes into which individuals are often forced. Moreover, Haskell's existence and actions within the community ignite discussions about the fluidity of gender and the oppressive structures that seek to maintain binary distinctions. His character acts as a mirror, reflecting the community's discomfort with what does not conform to its strict norms. Haskell represents then an outsider that disturbs the social system as he behaves in a way that this repressive and tight society would consider feminine-like. Therefore, we are told that, and I quote, his politeness was gruesomely excessive. The narrator also tells us that Haskell's unconventional manners prevent him from being considered good-looking. And I quote again from the text. Yes, it was ludicrous looking. His features were quite regular, and his figure was nicer than most of the non-athletic type. Except for these eccentric manners of his, he might have been called good-looking. Finish quoting. When asked why she does not like Haskell, Miss Jameson remarks that she does not like, and I quote, the way he rubs his glasses and blows on them and then puts cotton under the bridge so it won't chafe his nose. I finish quoting. Obviously, for this society, Haskell's unconventional and gentle behavior is not appropriate for a man. Besides, we are told that his taste in poetry is extremely queer, and that's a quote from the text, as it's very unusual for anybody to read modern verse, least of all for a clerk in a grocery shop. Bakhtin's concept of heteroglossia, that is, the coexistence of multiple voices and perspectives within a single text, becomes evident as we consider the variety of responses to Haskell's nonconformity. While the dominant voices in the community push towards conformity and suppression of difference, Haskell's very presence introduces a subversive counter-narrative. This creates a dynamic interplay of voices, where silence and subtext are as telling as the spoken word. Therefore, the title of this very paper, Subversive Echoes in Silence, referred to these moments of unspoken resistance and the subtle yet powerful challenges to hegemonic discourse. Through these echoes, Williams critiques the societal mechanisms that govern behavior and suppress individual expression. In conclusion, Tennessee Williams's Something About Him serves as a rich text for examining the intersections of societal power structures, gender identity, and individual agency. The story, through its portrayal of Haskell and Miss Rose, provides a poignant critique of the societal constraints that shape and, at times, repress identity. It compels us to consider the ways in which individuals cope with, resist, and are reshaped by the centripetal forces of their environments. That is all. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to our discussions and any questions that you might have. Thank you very much. And these are some works that I've used for this research. Thank you very much.